Hello humans, Master Dinnerflex here, bringing you the low-quality content you deserve, and today we are going to be going over the unfinished archetype that is Darklords. This is a one that I've kind of been teasing for way too long, so it's finally time we get into it, but there's one thing we need to start off by letting you know about this archetype, and that is, this archetype's OCG name is actually Fallen Angel. Now, that might not sound like it matters that much, but it ultimately means this archetype has the Archfiend issue going on, where it's so open-ended with its name, random cards will just find their way into this archetype. Like some of the oldest effect monsters, like Darklord Marie, it's a fallen angel. Nurse Reficule, probably a card people are unhappy to see you summon. Also a Darklord card. It's just like things like that because of this. So in addition, there are like mini sub-archetypes within these two. Like, these old school GX Darklords are very different from the ones we're about to show. Zerato is kind of his own thing. I don't know how else to describe it because he quite literally doesn't even share anything in common with these cards. But the ones we are talking about are these. These are the newest series of Darklord cards. I just threw that one away. And they are very different from all the others. And this is ultimately, when someone says they're talking about the Darklord archetype, they're talking about these cards. And these ones are the ones that are unfinished and the ones we're going to try to fix, because they are frustrating, to say the least. So let's get into it, and you can see what I mean. Darklord Morningstar, level 11, cannot be special summoned, and when it's tribute summoned, you special summon Darklord monsters from your hand and/or deck, up to the number of monsters your opponent controls. And then it can mill cards from the top of their deck and gain life points for Darklord cards that were milled based on the number of Darklord cards you control. So, it's a very interesting card, very cool and interesting strategy involving this card, but obviously it's made for going second, so I can tell you right now, almost nothing synergizes with this. Call it as it is, nothing synergizes with this card, and even the cards that attempt to do a very bad job of it. But let's get into how the strategy ultimately works if you're actually trying to play this deck. Darklord Eggshell. You can discard this card and one Darklord card, draw 2 cards. Okay. You can pay 1,000 life points, then target one Darklord spell or trap in your graveyard. Apply that target's effect, then shovel that target into the deck. You can only use each effect of Darklord Eggshell once per turn. You can only special summon Darklord Eggshells once per turn. So, this is actually something very important to remember. Every effect you're going to see for a while, they can copy a spell or trap card's effect from the graveyard as a quick effect, and you can only special summon them once per turn. This is something that's going to have to be kept in mind, but ultimately, those effects are on all other Darklords, so the top effect is the one that's going to differentiate them. Teslacopia, same as the others, but if a Darklord monster you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can discard this card instead. Not a terrible effect, I guess. It'd be nice if it had a better way to get itself into the graveyard, but I guess it's still something. Nurgle, fairies inflict piercing battle damage. That is nowhere near as good as what we've seen. Okay, it is level 8, which level 8 is far better than level 10 and level 9. But so that's something to keep in mind. Nastin, you can discard 2 other Darklord cards, special summon this card from your hand. That is terrible. I don't care that it even special summons itself. Going for -2 is bad. Especially because it doesn't even try to pay itself back. That's terrible. And then finally, Amdust. You can discard this card and one Darklord card, target a Darklord card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. This one's also deceptively not great, because if you can copy spells and traps from your graveyard, why would you want to add them back to your hand? Because they're going to be shuffled in the deck while they're in the graveyard. So it ultimately, the only cards you'd ever want to grab back would be spells and traps, but they're live while in the graveyard. This card doesn't really make that much sense, and you don't want to grab back a monster because that doesn't make sense. Like, all your monsters want to be in the graveyard. But this is ultimately it. And as you can see, there's an unbelievable disparity between Eggshell and pretty much every other Darklord. Like, they are maybe passable at best, to straight up terrible, or they're Darklord Eggshell. Okay, that is hilarious. So let's get into the normal summons. What does the normal summons have to say with this archetype? And this is where, I will tell you right now, these came in their own separate wave of support, and you can tell immediately. During the main phase, quick effect, you can activate this effect, tribute summon one fairy monster face up. Hey, that's a pretty cool effect. It's actually kind of terrifying, because fairy monsters, many of them that have tribute summon, like you want to tribute summon, are like Vanity's Ruler and Angel 07. Like, some of the most powerful floodgates are tribute summon fairies. That's a kind of scary effect. And to do it on your opponent's turn is like even more so. Let's keep going. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can make all monsters your opponent currently controls lose 500 attack and defense for each fairy monster on the field until the end of this turn. Okay, that's pretty decent. This card's kind of weird because, I guess as long as you have ways to just keep special summoning and special summoning, like normal summoning this and having like a way to tribute summon a floodgate on your opponent's turn actually isn't that bad. So this card's like weird, but you can see it. Like, this one makes sense, and more so, it'd be far more interesting to tribute summon Morningstar with it. So there's, like, potential in this card. As long as the rest of the cards we're going to see are actually going to assist this idea, this one could be pretty good. Spoiler alert, that is not going to happen. This card is very good to synergize with cards that don't exist. That's the best way I can describe it, because it very much has an effect that is ultimately strong, but there's no context that allows it to be. And that's like the greatest mistake of this card. There are very limited combos that allow you to even utilize the card the way it's trying to be utilized. It's just very awkward. Although I will say, if you want to play a Tribute Stun deck with fairies, this is a good card to put in it. And then finally, Indulge Darklord. I'm going to tell you this is a Stratos, and I hate the fact that it is, if this card is normal or special summoned. Take 2 Darklord monsters from your hand or deck with different levels, except another copy of itself. Special summon them, one of them to your opponent's field, and add the other to your hand. That is so bad. That is ridiculous. It feels like it's the rest of this card, which, to be fair, you can see they each share a pair of wings, so obviously that's the case. They're supposed to be the other half. The problem is, if you're trying to set up Morningstar like this, then you want this card already on field. So what exactly are you supposed to be doing? You gave your opponent a monster so Morningstar can at least do something turn 1, but you add Morningstar to hand, but you don't have a way to get to this. So it really feels like this was supposed to summon a Darklord to your field. Like, I have no other way of describing it. This card is so mind-numbingly dumb, and it has no context besides Morningstar, but it doesn't even do that. Like, it feels like there's an effect just missing in between them, which, by the way, this is supposed to be in between them, and it still doesn't do that. Like, how do you mess up just this bad? What is going on? There's a huge disconnect with this wave of support that introduced these cards, and it is so hard to describe why this is so dumb, but you can just read it and know that it is. Let's get into the spells, because if your archetype is going to be entirely based on copying spells and traps, then we need to get into the spells and traps. And then we got Darklord Contact. Special summon 1 Darklord monster from your graveyard in defense position. You can only activate 1 per turn. That's totally good. Like, first off, you're sending all your fairies to the graveyard. You need to have a way to revive them, so obviously this card would be good. Really, what you'd be more concerned with is making sure there's far more copies of this that you can possibly activate, because if you're sending all your stuff means you need to have multiple ways of grabbing cards out of your graveyard or have the benefit of them being in the graveyard. The spells and traps organically benefit from being in the graveyard, but there needs to be more than that. Banishment of the Darklords. Add 1 Darklord card from your deck to your hand, except Banishment of the Darklords. You can only activate 1 per turn. Okay, so another spell that basically is a better copy than opening any spell and trap in the deck, because if you open this and a spell and trap, so when you copy this is actually just 2 Rotas. So this is by far better than anything else. Because it's an extra step that gets you to an extra card. This is by far the best one. Okay. So we're on a good start, but again, none of the monsters can search spells and traps. So how are you getting to this? And then I'll tell you right now, all the traps say send a Darklord from your hand or field to graveyard to activate it, and then they all have pretty decent effects. You'd really want to copy them engraved. Rebellion, pop, enchantment, take control till the end phase, Sanctified, negate an effect and gain life points equal to its attack, and this is a fusion trap. Yeah, no, I said a fusion trap. Nothing about what you've seen here would imply it's a fusion deck, but apparently it is. Good God. There is no way to get to this card besides this, is there? So you're telling me, if I don't open either of these two cards, I don't actually have a way to play my deck? Excuse me? Maybe the extra deck. Maybe I'm missing something in the extra deck. Condemn Darklord. You can tribute summon fairy monsters that require 2 tributes by banishing 2 monsters from your graveyard instead of tributing. This is still treated as a tribute summon. Damn. That's actually cool. It was the same discussion I was having with Capricious, like, fairies have some pretty scary tribute summon monsters, so having an effect like that is, like, mind-boggling. You can discard 1 card, take 1 Darklord monster from your deck, and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Condemn Darklord once per turn, then once per turn during the end phase, gain 500 life points for each fairy monster on the field. So why does this feel like a better version than the entirety of these 2 cards outside of tribute summoning on your opponent's turn? Like, this card already does Morningstar better than these 2, and, like, you really have to ask why this card specifically even exists. Because if a Stratos exists in your extra deck, what's the point of this? That is crazy frustrating. But then it doesn't even fill the gap that these 2 need to make a turn 1 Morningstar play. So then I have to ask, what's going on here? What exactly is being done with these 2 cards? And by the way, forgot to mention, this doesn't access spells or traps. It can only search the monsters, so then you just can't do anything. I guess this is, like, the most hilarious part of this is, so the easy extra deck monster to get to can't search the spells and traps. The monsters in the main deck can't search the spells and traps. The only thing that can search the spells and traps are the spells and traps. So there are 6 cards in the entirety of your deck list that allow you to play the game. That is obnoxious. And then finally, the fusion. Your opponent cannot target fairy monsters you control with card effects, which is a powerful effect to have a 4,000 attack monster. And you can only use 1 of the 1 and 2 effects per turn. Okay, so it's like a Dragon Ruler, one or the other. If this fusion summon using Darklord Morningstar as a material, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. During the main phase, you can pay 1,000 life points to summon 1 fairy monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position. Dang. You know, this deck needs revival so bad. If only there was a way to access it without a fusion spell and 3 dark fairies in my hand. I guess this is like the ultimate problem you will see with this archetype, is that it has so many good cards without, like, context behind them. And then more importantly, this deck is written around utilizing spells and traps more than once. So why does not a single monster in this entire archetype search a spell and trap? Not one of them. Not a single one of them gets you to spells and traps, but your deck does not operate without seeing them. Like, your deck cannot play unless it sees contact or banishment. And then your deck will not have much of any quick effect interactions to deal with your opponent's stuff unless you just draw the traps. I guess this is, like, the most frustrating thing about this deck is, like, it totally just disregards that its own play style. And then I guess this is what happened. We got another wave of support that was this card, this card, this card, and this card, and this is just out of nowhere and doesn't help any of the problems this deck was having. It straight up is like a Red Eyes effect where they just decide to do something else next wave, and you didn't even fulfill the first part. It's so crazy. I've never seen anything quite as ridiculous as this, outside of, I guess, Red Eyes. So, what do we need to fix this archetype? Well, let's make it very simple. The monsters need to have a way to search a spell or trap, and then, if there's going to be fusions, let's at least commit to it. So these are the 2 problems we are going to go about solving. I don't think making new materials is necessary, but it might be, but, like, putting 2 fairies on board is crazy easy. But let's see what we can do. Now, for the first of the new cards, I made Darklord Thanatos. The funny thing about the Darklords theme is that it's obviously based on Abrahamic religions, which is funny in the context of the US, because the US, when Yu-Gi-Oh! Was new, wanted to say, oh, it's so satanic, etc., etc., and that faded out because it was not real. And 10 years, maybe 15 years later, we get an actual satanic archetype, which is awesome. That's so funny. I'm sorry, that's hilarious. But the thing about it, even though it is based on that, they also like to use other, like, dark religious figures from other religions and parts of the world. Like Ixtab and Teslacopia obviously are not but they ultimately fill the same theme. Even though some of them are not actually evil, they're just associated with grim things. Thanatos is kind of the same thing. But another thing, the Darklords, they actually have very specific leveling. Like, one is 11, one is 10, one is 9, one is 8, one is 7, one is 6. The problem is the level 7, Nastin, is terrible. And more importantly, according to the lore, he betrays the Darklords and I think is consumed by them. So they need another level 7. So give them another level 7. So we made Darklord Thanatos, and I just used the art from Evil Swarm Thanatos. I did the stupid doodles with pencil, but I really need to put more effort in next time. You can send this card from your hand or field, and one other Darklord card from your hand or either face-up field that you own to the graveyard. Add one Darklord spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Dang, wasn't that so easy? So basically, I wanted to knock out 2 birds with 1 stone with this effect. Not only does it search spells and traps, it actually makes Indulge Darklord not one of the worst cards ever printed, in such an absolute insult. So you can send off whatever Indulged put on your opponent's field, because it's on either field, but you own the card. That's basically what it means. And you can get to search a spell or trap for your troubles. Then it has a copy effect and the hard once per turn special summon effect. So we are good there. And it's a level 7, and whatever you summon out just has to not be level 7, which is good. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get to the next one. Now, this one, so because this archetype is called Fallen Angel, I decided to commit a little bit to it because it'd be funny. We got the furthest Fallen Angel. It's always treated as a Darklord card because those are the same archetype. 2 fairy monsters, including two dark fairy monsters, including a Darklord monster. You can only use one of the first and second effect of Furthest Fallen Angel once per turn, but you can only use a third effect once per duel. If this card is fusion summoned using Condemned Darklord as a material, you can banish all cards from your opponent's graveyard. It is basically an inverse of the first Darklord, making this ultimately the last Darklord. Go ahead, banish all their stuff, and then you're good to go. Quick effect. You can pay 1,000 life points, which I need to put during the main phase because that's important. Add 1 Darklord card from your deck to your hand. Oh, so another way to search, what's it called? To search more Darklord cards. Very neat. And finally, if this card is special summoned from the graveyard by the effect of a Darklord card, you can gain life points until you have 6,000. That's the once per duel effect. Basically, if you're almost dead and you revive this, you can get back in the game. I just wanted another fusion. Not only another fusion, but one that also searched spells and traps, so this deck stopped feeling so one-sided. But now let's get into the new spells we are going to introduce. Next, we have Festering of the Darklords, aka Festering of the Fallen Angels. Special summon 2 Darklord tokens. Fairy Dark level 1, attack defense 0, in attack position. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn, except fairy monsters. While the Darklord token is on the field, you can tribute summon 1 Darklord monster in addition to your normal summoner set. Also, any Darklord monster tribute summoned by tributing a Darklord token cannot have its effects negated. You can only activate 1 Festering of the Darklord once per turn. It's just a token summoner that makes tribute summoning way easier. That's basically it. And the deck, because it's locked into special summons of only once per turn, it would be pretty nice to have like better ways to tribute summon and cheese them out rather than just hoping you can special summon some monsters beforehand. And I think there's a good approach to it. Plus, it's 2 tokens to make Condemned, so this alone could be a pretty solid starter. But let's get into the last spell. Now, I will be 100% honest. I searched up and down the English language to find a single word that could be used at all to describe Darklords in any way, shape, or form. Profusion from the Furthest Fallen Angel. Profusion basically just means to pour out as much as possible, which, I mean, I guess it's a stretch, but I wanted to have that word fusion somewhere. Profusion from the Furthest Fallen Angel. This card is always treated as a Darklord card because it is. You can only activate once one of these cards per turn. After resolving this face-up card, banish it instead of sending it to the graveyard. That is something important I felt I needed to do. I think this spell is very powerful, and I didn't want you to activate it and still have access to it in the graveyard. You are either going to activate it in the graveyard, or you're going to activate it on field. You are not getting both. Because once you see the bottom effect, you'll see why. Fusion summon 1 Dark Fairy monster from your extra deck. by shuffling monsters from your hand, field, or graveyard into the deck as fusion materials. If Profusion from the furthest fallen angel is not face up on the field for this effect, you can also banish one Darklord monster from your deck or extra deck as fusion material. So basically, if you use the shuffle effect while it's in the graveyard, you can just substitute a material from the deck. Which is saying something, because that means you get to substitute it during your opponent's turn, which could be the first or the furthest Darklord. So either banish their entire graveyard or destroy their entire field. Which is why I didn't want you to have both. You're either using this as a combo piece or you're using this as a disruption. You are not getting both. But that's going to be it from the Darklord cards. But now time for a cop-out. And this cop-out is Sacred Arklord, Mycalis, and basically, normally when Konami makes support for decks, they only give them 4. But once in a while, you'll also see when it comes up to the free agents, as they call them, there's ones, they were very specifically, obviously, designed with an archetype in mind. So we're going to do not a part of the archetype card with this one. And once per turn, you can detach material from this card, target one face-up card on the field, negate its effects till the end of the turn. This is a quick effect while it has a fairy monster attached as a material. Okay, so sure, it's a generic rank 8, but in reality it isn't. It is made for fairies. This card is in the graveyard. And target one level 8 fairy monster you control. Negate its effects until the end of the turn. Then, if its effects are negated, you can special summon this card, then attach that monster to it as a material, but banish it when only use the field. You can only control one card with this name. Basically, it's a rank 8 fairy pseudo-omni-negate that I felt the need to make simply because I teased making this video for months at this point, and it's only fair. I don't plan on doing this much, if ever, at all. But in this specific scenario, I think it was fine. So now let's take a look at the deck list now. Now this would be the very first attempt of figuring this deck list out. And I will say, obviously, you could probably optimize this way more, because now that we have a fusion monster that only requires 2 materials, there are like some pretty efficient starters to that. But this is more what we're going to look at, and one thing I will say, and one thing I will also state, why I think this archetype would benefit so much from just seeing support. These are some of the coolest cards Konami has ever designed, and the best type and attribute combination for them is specifically Dark Fairy. I'm going to show it off in the demo hand, but these cards are very cool, and if we ever get this deck mildly competent, these are going to be awesome. And that's kind of why I wish they would just support this archetype, because of everything, we get to finally use these cards properly. But now that we got that out of the way, let's do a test hand. Now, when you look at that, this is our opening hand. It has both those cards I wanted to see in it, which is very handy. But let's go ahead and start. We're going to start off with Banishment, and Banishment is going to go ahead and search Indulge Darklord. Oh boy, my cards are breaking in deck. Then, we are going to normal summon Indulge Darklord, activate its effect. We are going to add Ixchel to hand and special summon Superbia to our opponent's field. Because we already have Thanatos, we're going to go ahead and activate it. Send off our opponent's Superbia. Then we are going to search a spell or trap, which will be Contact. Next, we are going to activate Festering of the Darklords, summon these to an attack position. Going to link one off with the Indulged and itself to summon the Condemned Darklord. Let's see, we can go ahead and Tribute Summon here. But we're going to go ahead and start with Contact first. Special Summon Superbia, which will Special Summon Thanatos. And then Thanatos will go ahead and pay 1,000 to recycle back this. And that will allow us to get the Fusion spell, Profusion. And next, we are going to go ahead and link these 2 off into Celestial Knight Parsheth. I didn't even use the Condemned Darklord, but there's not a lot of ways. Actually, there is a way to do so. We'll go ahead, keep the token up for a bit, and Condemned Darklord. We're going to toss the Fusion, which is a little weird. Let's go ahead and summon this back. And that will allow us to search a Darklord, and we will go ahead and get Capricious. We're going to activate Shadow's Light. No. Actually, what we're going to do is activate Duality, tribute this, and that will allow us to summon Vylon Epsilon, which is a fairy. And then next, since we can, let's go ahead and tribute summon with Condemned Darklord. No, actually. We're going to tribute summon, tributing Epsilon, and this, to normal summon Ixchel. Next, we are going to go ahead and activate Shadow's Light, target the Ix-Shell, and summon Vylon Omega. Now we will use Vylon Omega, and that will allow us to equip this, which is hilarious. And then next, we are going to go ahead and activate Ix-Shell, which will allow us to shuffle back Profusion, which will allow us to shuffle back these two, which will then allow us to summon the Furthest Fallen Angel, which we will go ahead and then activate to search a Darklord card, which we will do this. So we will pay 2,000 life points in addition. 2,000. And then we'll go ahead and banish Shadow's Light to normal summon Capricious Darklord. So this might not seem impressive, but watch what happens on our opponent's turn. First, let's measure what we have. We have a pop right here that's going to double as a pop. And then we have a monster negate with Omega and Epsilon. So during our opponent's turn, we can pay 1,000 to add a Darklord. And then in that same main phase, we contribute these two to normal summon Morningstar, which of course, I didn't put it in this deck list, but I probably should. Darklord Ukobach, which of course could summon, send, wherever it is, Profusion, which one of these two can copy. This will get shuffled in the deck, the Ukobach, and the one that activated the Fusion Trap spell, for the first Darklord to pop the entire field. So obviously there's like a lot more you can do with what's going on, but I just wanted to demonstrate this. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, there's like, again, so much more you can do, because I didn't even summon this guy, and you could be more efficient. I want to do Vylon stuff because it's hilarious, and I drew both, and that's the only time you can do it. But there's like so much more that you could do with this, and I just find it hilarious. But that's gonna be it for me. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Probably going to do a deck profile soon, but don't be shocked if I do a lot more of these in the coming months, because this is becoming like one of my favorite segments to do, and it's a lot of fun just dissecting card design and just looking at like what are ultimately a lot of people's pet decks, because it's amazing how many of them are very close to being what they need to be. They're just like denied the exact card they need every single time. But I would like to change that, at least like give an idea of how to change that, and maybe even approach the deck in a different manner with the cards we do have. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all for watching, and remember, Master Dinnerflax will take your soul.